We're back with Season 8, Episode 20, The Washouts. This is the episode when lightning dust makes her terrifying return as the truly insanely villainous. But also, you know, Scootaloo... God, this is actually a really good episode. Scootaloo has issues because she's growing up, and she's drifting away from her adult, and her adult doesn't like that, and so they're trying to deal with some of these things, and there's just kind of some issues, and then just, and everything's cool at the end. All right. So, we start off at the beginning. I'm amused that not only is the Rainbow Dash fan club still going, but Rainbow still attends it, which is totally not weird at all, if you need the ego boost, of course. And then Scootaloo is like, well, we're done. All right, get out. So, I've decided to found another fan club. Dun, dun, dun. I love how that's the hook. I've consumed an enormous quantity of fiction in my life, and the older I get, the more I appreciate these kind of fictions, where they bother to take something so mundane and so low-key and make it interesting, and center the drama around that. Oh, there's another point to this episode, too. Don't mistake me, but, you know. Either way, so, obviously this hurts Rainbow a bunch. Because, of course, obviously Rainbow needs to retain her worldview, of course. And there's a wonderful bit which is beautifully written, where Rainbow says, she said the Wonderbolts aren't cool. And it kind of sounded like she said I wasn't cool either. Notice the way she phrases that, the way that she presents that. You know, it's, I'm kind of maybe fine. Maybe. But everyone else is just horrible, awful, definitely not dealing with this. It's going to be cool. Everything's going to be cool. It's going to be cool. Oh god, oh god, oh god. And she's just freaking out over it because of course she is. I mean, ignoring the obvious fact. And yeah, Rarity and AJ are just smiling at her because they've already been through this. She's freaking out not just because of her own self-esteem issues, which we've talked about several times before, but more to the point because this Scootaloo is in every way that matters her younger sister. She obviously kind of wants / needs that person there, that person who looks up to her, that person who cares about her, just like Rarity and just like Applejack, right? Oh yeah, there's also a specific percentage amount, I think it was like 20 bajillion, something like that. Now y'all tell me if Apple Bloom starts liking bananas. Anyways, so of course she's freaking out, but then they decide to go to a show, which of course has extreme chocolate cupcakes, which look really good. So, I will admit, let's pause for just a moment. This is kind of terrifying to me. When I go over to visit my family every Monday, what happens is as soon as I see my niece, she rushes up to give me a big hug, and she insists on trying to spend as much time with me as she can. You know, playing, or hanging out, or talking about things, or doing her math lessons, or whatever. And that's awesome, and it's probably the highlight of my week. I am quietly terrified for the day when that's no longer going to be true. Because it's probably going to happen, and it's probably going to happen sometime within the next 5 or 6 years, give or take. And that's going to suck, because I'm pretty low on HP myself. So that sucks. But this kind of thing is a very real, very demonstrable thing. That's more the perspective of a uncle, in my case, the adult, as I like to call it. But, you know, younger sibling or child, you know, your own child, or your niece or nephew or whatever, it's pretty much the same thing. We don't want to lose that connection with them. Like I said, we've actually already covered this topic with Rarity and with Applejack in this show. But I do like the nuance they handle onto this one here. Rainbow is having a bit of a breakdown, but then she sees the show and she's like, oh wow, this is awesome. Two little tidbits I actually like. First of all, the show actually mentions the theme of the Washouts, which is leap before you look. Interesting bit of foreshadowing. But second of all, you have this huge disclaimer that these are trained people in special equipment. Please don't do this at home. Remember that for later. But yeah, Scootaloo's totally fangirling, and Rainbow's getting into it, because of course she would. This is exactly the kind of thing that Rainbow would be into. It's the kind of thing she would probably do if it was being done properly. And notice I made that little emphasis there on the end. Yeah, Twilight's into it too. Which, you know, I'm with it. Twilight's liked the Wonderbolts for a while, so that's logical. Especially since she got her wings. Everyone's into it. That's cool. I'm cool. So far, this has been pretty legit, right? Everything's cool, you know. Rainbow takes them over. I'm kind of wondering how Rainbow had never even heard of these people. keeping in mind that, lightning dust hasn't been around in about 5 years. So you can't tell me that these people washed out that long ago, right? Well, maybe they did. I don't know. But it's just weird to me that Rainbow had never even heard of these people. Whatever. It's whatever. It's true. She hadn't heard about the roller coaster, too. So bad writing is the answer to that question. Anyways, so it's like, okay. We're getting past that. Whatever. And then it's like, Rainbow Dash. Lightning dust. Scootaloo! That got a laugh out of me. It's been pretty legit. This is when they mentioned that they don't really have rules. They don't really have safety precautions going on. They just have, whatever. And notice they're having this conversation while, I forget her name, the British one, is currently bandaging up her leg for an injury she just suffered in the show she just did. We saw it. The thing clamped down on her towards the end. Now, she was able to wriggle free, but again, notice how they're actually showing the unsafe nature of their work as they're doing this. Now, there is a degree of unsafetiness, for lack of a better way to put it, which is just inherent to several I can't think of the word all of a sudden. Blank sports. The kind of thing that's showy. I can't think of the term all of a sudden. Spectacle. There we go. Spectacle sports. That's the term. Now, I don't just mean, the extreme stuff, but I mean quite a few people. Quite a few races, quite a few concepts have these kind of safety laws for a really, really good reason. Speaking as someone who's been following Formula One for years and years at this point, Formula One has layers upon layers of safety rules and regulations, which they are very strict on, and for good reason. Because someone screws up in a Formula One race, someone will die. That has happened. It's actually really rare nowadays that someone dies in Formula One. Very rare. Why? Because of the fact that they have dozens, if not hundreds, of safety regulations and checks and procedures and yada yada. And I mean stuff that goes into the very construction of the tracks and the cars, never mind all the stuff they do when they're actually on the thing, right? And yes, NASCAR is another good example of this. Now, I hate to go to racing, it's just that I know that better than most things. Even when you're doing a professional stunt, there's usually layers upon layers of safety put on top of that to make sure that that person is going to go out there and get themselves killed. I shouldn't have to explain this because Alec Baldwin is currently dealing with some issues regarding this too. For those of you not aware, and because I actually am aware of this because Hollywood, there are layers of safety that go into shots which are used, and gun safety which is used on a set. Because they do use semi-live rounds, which do actually make a sound, and they do actually have live rounds available, and they do have layers upon layers of checks to make sure that that is a safe environment to which to go. And when I say layers and layers of checks, I mean, in general, they keep track of who's even put a hand on a firearm when it comes to a movie set, right? Like, you're not even supposed to touch the guns, because that's how they do those things. And again, those safety reasons, those safety rules exist for a reason. Maybe I'm just weird because I used to work at a place where doing a nightly safety check was part of my job, but I fully believe in this concept, mostly because I've seen it proven so many times, right? I mean, we don't want a repeat of that place I can't think of the name of right now. Hang on, I can't think of the name of the place. It's a... Hang on. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. That's the one. We don't want that, do we? This was in Greenwich Village in Manhattan, New York City on March 25th, 1911. Most of you have probably heard of this event, even though if it's not actually triggering any specific memories. But on the off chance you're not familiar with it, it was a fire that was caused by lack of safety regulations in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. And it killed a lot of people. 146 people died from the fire or from jumping to try and get away from the building that was on fire. Because it wasn't just one thing of safety regulation. It was like 3 or 4 separate things of safety violation that were just staggered on top of each other. It's such an important thing here in the States because it is most often pointed to as one of the single biggest things that led to the massive safety reform wave, which would sweep the United States for the next several decades. All of those safety regulations I just mentioned, those are kind of new, at least from a historical perspective. You rewind time 40 years and Formula One was extremely unsafe. You rewind time 30 years and filmmaking was extremely unsafe, and so forth and so on. This is the kind of thing that's been building, and it is, to be honest, hasn't really been a regular thing, except in my very lifetime within the last 40 years. But again, it is something I am 100% in favor of. Because even if you're doing something big and scary and risky and dangerous, you still don't want someone to die doing it, right? And yeah, I see people in chat are already mentioning multiple kinds of examples of these kind of situations where they were not up to code, where things were not being done safely. And yeah, some things are still over the top. This is still a problem to some extent. We're doing better about it, obviously, but you get my point. I hate to keep banging on this point so much, but this is honestly one of the critical points of the episode. There is a difference between, being boring, which, some kids say, oh yeah, sure, whatever, and actually having proper safety procedures. And when you're doing something like this, proper safety procedures should be priority one, even before the entertainment of the actual show. And S.A. Ross, I think it was S.A. Ross, someone mentions that it is implied several times, not just in this episode, that the Wonderbolts have these kind of safety checks, these kind of safety measures, like the Blue Angels do, to use a direct comparison, who also have tons and tons of safety layers, still managed to put on some pretty good shows for it. So we've established the safety bubble. Let's just leave that point there, because it's going to come up in just a minute. Because the very next thing that happens, I guess a minute is a bit outside, the very next thing that happens, God, I remember that one too, Darth Maduro, is Scootaloo wants to join. So, no. Now you'll notice, credit to the writer, Rainbow immediately and unhesitatingly is like, no. And Scootaloo pushes for it, and Rainbow's like, no. Almost in a confused term, like, no. Yeah, Rainbow shuts that down instantly. Let's be clear about this. Correct decision. Absolutely the correct decision. Rightfully so. Yeah, absolutely. Now, she's not even... Yeah, even Lightning Dust is like, well, I'll think about it. Yeah, no, absolutely not. This is why that safety bubble thing we spent like 5 minutes establishing is so important. Because this is the kind of thing adults probably shouldn't do without proper safety checks. A kid absolutely shouldn't. I mean, even if she's a teenager at this point, I don't know, their ages are kind of vague. The fact remains. Would you trust a 14-year-old to do this kind of stunt work without proper safety checks? And I do keep emphasizing that without proper safety checks thing. Because, yeah, duh, right? So this then leads to the failed strategy. A full-body, winged hoof cast drinking through a straw. I've actually seen this strategy employed in real life. I've never actually seen it accurately done. Let me walk that back. I've never seen it done to success. It's called scaring them straight. It's a very common strategy. It's actually something that the legal system here in the United States likes to employ. They call it shock time. There's actually a term for it. The whole point is they are actually harsher towards the younger, specifically to try and scare them. It pretty much never works. If you're just an adult figure trying to scare them, then all you're doing is either filling their heads with the wrong kind of messages or pushing them more in favor of it. Activating that defiance or that contrarianism, which is very endemic to people in general, never mind children. So she tries this strategy, and it doesn't really work all that great, because why would it? This then leads to Rainbow, who is living in a van down the road. Yeah, exactly right. I should probably mention before I keep going, I actually have employed a similar but not quite the same approach here. What I do is much quieter and much calmer and has been proven to work multiple times, although I should admit I've only ever really done it with one child, my niece. What I do is I sit down and I have a different tone I use, and she knows my tones. And I explain to her very seriously and meticulously, this is what this will lead to. It'll cause this. Now, you've never felt this before. I have. Let me try to explain it to you. And then I come up with something that she has experienced, and then I try to explain how much worse this is than that. And I want her to understand very clearly and thoroughly why this is not happening and why this is not a good idea. She's gotten upset about me for it once. Just once. And I said, that's okay. You know, it's your right to be upset at me because all you understand is I'm keeping you from something you want to do. That's fine. But I do need you to understand that I'm not doing this because I hate you or because I'm mean or anything other than the fact that what you're attempting to do is not safe for the reasons I've previously described. And I just sort of lay the anvil down there, for lack of a better way to phrase that. It has worked 100% of the time so far. We'll see if it keeps working. Because, yeah, so one of the interesting things about this episode is it does briefly touch on this concept. I've talked about this a lot, and it's become a lot more important in my life since, you know, I've been helping to take care of my niece over the last few years. You need to not be a helicopter parent, right? You need to not be hovering over their heads and constantly, you know, just getting in the way and causing issues and not letting them experience things. People in general, especially children, need experience. This is how droid effect works. They need interactions. They need to understand through action. That's how they grow and that's how they learn. That's how all of us grow and learn. That's what we are. But there is a dividing line between acceptable and what I like to call actually bad. And I've talked about actually bad a few times on this show. Actually bad is never acceptable, to put it simply. That's the simplest definition. This should never happen. So if a child wants to do something on this line, honestly, you should probably let them. Be there as the safety net, of course. Be there as the support, and try to make sure they do it properly so they don't do it rushedly or just do it rashly like happens in this episode because they're just trying to shut you down. But, you know, let them make that mistake. When we get over here, nuh-uh. No. And there are several examples of that, which I'm not going to go into right now. But yeah, this episode gives a perfectly good, if fictional, example. I want to go be in a stunt troupe. No. Without proper safety. I have to keep emphasizing that because it really does change the dynamic. Not having proper safety procedures. By the way, Low Kitty shared something about being in a chemical testing lab earlier. Can I just say, even when it comes down to something really, really basic like a fast food restaurant, safety procedures exist for a reason. There are very clear, very defined safety protocols in a fast food place. I don't know how many places follow them, but I can tell you right now that when I was the manager at my Arby's, we absolutely followed them. Because those exist for a freaking reason. Rules about not accepting food back from customer once it's left the safe zone. Rules about making sure that you're cleaning and make sure you are staying clean and your work area is clean for when you're making food. Making sure, yeah, cooking oil spills, making sure you're being very careful around that extremely hot, boiling oil, etc., etc. And I want to stress this. I probably sound like I'm coming down as draconian. This is all basic stuff. It's just stuff that it should exist for a reason. And I did make sure that we followed each and one of those simple safety procedures. I myself did actually have a scar for a while from an oil fire because that hurts like hell. It's just, there's nothing I can do about it until Star Destroyer. They've been doing it for weeks now. They're probably going to do it for weeks more. It's just part of my life now. Yeah, there's tons and tons of stuff, safety stuff that tends to happen in the background that most people aren't even aware of. And that's fine. That's how that should work. I mean, one of my personal favorites is just flying. You get on a commercial airline, and the layers of safety protocols that go into that are monumental. I couldn't even list them right now because it's such a large list, we'd be here a while. Right? But my point is, I wanted to bring that down to the familiar level because even going into something as simple as a fast food restaurant still has those safety protocols, and for good freaking reason. Admittedly, I got a little bit of this, you'd think from the military side of my family, but no, it's actually from the medical side of my family. Because the rules and regs for how you operate with what and how when it comes to drugs or when it comes to operations or when it comes to taking care of patients or old folks' homes, stuff like that, there's a lot of regs that go into that. And I was made aware of quite a few of those at a very young age. You know, any time I visited my mother at work, guess what I had to do? Anyways, sorry, I'm getting way off topic here, but the point is, Scootaloo then wants to go do this extremely unsafe thing. Well, that sucks. Okay. Now, Rainbow is... You could tell how much... I think this is a minor point, but the episode emphasizes how much this is bothering Rainbow so well because she bumps into Twilight. This was probably not done on purpose, but this is done by Nick Confalone. He's a good writer, and MLP is a good show in general, so I'm willing to guess this was done on purpose. Remember, this is Rainbow, someone who can pay attention without even trying while flying. It's literally one of her things, is that she has very, very high awareness while flying, and she bumps right into Twilight. She is that distracted and that out of it. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, is her ego that? No. She's not, it's not about her ego. And you'll notice this is one of the other things the episode does very well. It starts off being about her ego, and it drifts into her being concerned for Scootaloo, which it should. Obviously, Rainbow would be hurt by this. But very quickly, the focus becomes about Scootaloo and her safety and her life. And it's very clear that the thing that's actually bothering Rainbow isn't being usurped by the Washouts or losing the love and admiration of Scootaloo. It's, oh my god, is Scootaloo going to be okay? This then leads to Scootaloo confronting Rainbow. Now, you remember how I mentioned earlier that one of the things you want to do is encourage them so that they don't do something rash? So that they don't say something, problematic? Yeah, exactly, Raskor. Let me share a story with you. My mother told me at a very young age, if you ever want to go out there and you want to try boozing, alcohol, or drugs, or marijuana, or whatever, do it at home. Do it here with me. It was something she made extremely clear multiple times. It's actually an idea I agree with to this very day. Why? Because that's something very dangerous and very risky, but if I'm going to try it, I'm going to try it, right? That is my choice. So if you're going to do it home where it's safe, where I, a trained pharmacist, can take care of you if something goes bad. At the very least, I could call the actual nurse and get them out. Don't just go out into some back alley with some friends. Do it where you can at least have that safety net. And that has stuck with me ever since. I was like 6 when she first gave me that speech. That has stuck with me ever since. Now, I actually didn't try drugs or marijuana or booze because I'm just not into that, but I always had that option. Because you don't want what Scootaloo does in this episode to happen. For her to just rush off and join and start this whole thing, which they've barely practiced and they haven't actually done safety checks on, and just kind of go for it. Ironically, Darth Vadoro, yes. Although it's more nuanced than that. It would be more accurate to say, don't try this yourself, might actually be a simpler way to say that. Because the only reason that phrase exists is because of legal requirements. They don't want to be encouraging other people to do something that they're doing when they're experienced to know what they're doing. So, this of course then leads to Twilight and Rainbow talking about this whole situation, and Twilight says, you can't, I wrote this whole quote down because it's a good quote, you can't control her actions, only yours. You teach her what's safe and what isn't, like a good role model, and then you hope she makes the right decisions. Now this is fiction and Equestria, so it's better than real life. So what Rainbow can do is what Rainbow does in the episode. She hangs back as a safety net just in case she's needed. That makes sense in this specific circumstance because Rainbow is an experienced stunt flyer who is someone who is both fast and capable enough to help Scootaloo if something went wrong, which is exactly what did and is exactly what she did. That doesn't quite apply in real life as well as it does other things, but it does fit perfectly within the setting. Scootaloo also drops a bombshell on this. I've already mentioned how Rainbow is very clearly at this point all about Scootaloo. Like her ego has left the building at this point, and she is entirely focused on the real problem with her little sister. Scootaloo drops the bombshell. I can't fly. What I love about this so much is that it still hurts her, and she's still bothered by it, even though she's accepted it. Too often, fiction likes to portray accepting something bad as it doesn't bother you. In my experience, that's not how that works. You accept it because you don't let it stop you. It still sucks, it still hurts, and you'd still rather it not be there. And that's exactly what's with Scootaloo. This still hurts, and her voice and her face make it very clear that this is still something that she hates about herself. But she doesn't let it stop her, because I can still do something awesome. That is probably the best scene in the whole episode. Yeah, my leg, which will probably never be better until we get to true cybernetics, is something I just kind of live with now. In a similar manner. I don't have to live with breathing anymore. I can actually breathe now. That's pretty cool. That was a fixable problem. So, we start this thing, and this is where the episode is a little bit not great at this point. Essentially, this episode feels like it should have been a two-parter, which I know sounds weird, but these kind of ideas and these nuanced of ideas need more time to breathe and grow. Instead, we see Lightning Dust just kind of casually throw a kid into an obviously dangerous situation, because why not? I like Short Fuse too, by the way. I'm pretty sure I've seen him in the lines at Arby's before. Now, I will say that I don't think it's a complete fall into total villainy for Lightning Dust, because it does line up with what she's been doing so far, actually dangerous stuff and yada yada yada. Screw the rules, screw the safety regs. But at the same time, she is a little bit too callous about someone who is obviously worried about this and obviously trying to talk her way out of it because she's obviously afraid. So, what she's doing is legitimately villainous here. Quite possibly low kitty. In fact, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I actually agree with that, Traith. So I'm going to share that out loud for the viewers who don't read chat. Trathan says we should make the critical change would be have Scootaloo back out, and Lightning Dust is like, fine, I'll do it then, and does the stunt, and is about, it goes wrong, just like it did, and Rainbow rushes in to save Lightning Dust, excuse me. And this way, Rainbow can still give the same lesson to Scootaloo without Scootaloo actually being in such harm's way, and without Lightning Dust being overtly villainous. Same overall message, same overall point, still works, and is overall better. I do like that quite a bit. Lightning Dash. I also have to admit, the ending got a smile out of me. A Scootaloo fan club is something that's a little bit overdue, if I might be so bold. And I love that little line at the end. Rainbow Dash was right. Eavesdropping in your own fan club isn't weird at all. And then we cut to the end. So now we got to rate this. But first I have to answer Arctic Geo's question. What exactly do I find interesting in MLP? We just spent the last 28 minutes discussing safety regulations and rearing child. As in taking care of a child and teaching them what is safe and what isn't, and being a proper adult and role model to them. If that's not interesting, then I got nothing else. But that is the kind of stuff that I find interesting about this show. It actually doesn't hold back at all about actually hitting real adult mature topics with regards to believable, understandable, relatable things in real life applicability. God, I can't talk. That is the biggest thing that appeals to me about this show. There's a lot to discuss, if that makes any sense. Yes, we've also got an episode almost entirely about suicide, arguably two, but one of them definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of really nice themes and storytelling in the show. It's a shame that it's a cartoon about ponies, but what do you want, right? I've often thought that one of the reasons that this show gets away with this is because of the fact that they had so much star power and so much financial backing that the writers were allowed to stretch out more, if that makes sense. Because this is something we've seen in other shows, too. If you have that kind of backing, if you have that kind of support, they don't care as much as long as you're still producing new things that you can sell, right? Anyways, yeah, so we gotta rate this one, right? We gotta rate this episode. Well, I'm thinking deep blue. What's funny is this is by Nick Confalone. He has given us several yellows, Party Pooped, Hearthbreakers, Dungeons and Discords, one orange with no second prances, 3 reds, Saddle Row Review, Rock Solid Friendship, and The Breakup Breakdown. And 1 blue with the mod couple, which I couldn't give a lamentation status, but it was definitely in the running for it. I actually really like this one, for all the reasons I already mentioned. I don't think it's purple. I think this episode is pulled back from purple because, well, first of all, because of the big issue with lightning dust, like I mentioned earlier. But second of all, because it just doesn't have that extra oomph it really needs. Nevertheless, it is an extremely well-written episode that is very nuanced and does actually bother to hit on those aforementioned topics I mentioned. So I think red is a pretty easy, shoe-in for this. He's got a good track record, all things considered. Yeah, Nick tends to kill it. He's not like the best writer, but he's a pretty consistent writer. He's done more reds than anything else. More reds than other things of himself. Obviously, Josh Haber has more reds than him. And Megan McCarthy has more reds than him. Amy Keating-Rogers, I think, has tied reds for him at this point. He does have more reds than M.A. Larson, because M.A. Larson has more purples than anyone else. Next week, what are we covering next week? Next week we've got A Rockhoof and a Hard Place, which I'm assuming is about Rockhoof, and What Lies Beneath, which I have no idea what that is. So, before we cut off, I'm going to put this in the VOD, so I'm not going to cut off the recording. So there's something about a Christmas special. Now, I looked off camera because you guys mentioned this. The Christmas special is not part of the stuff that I own. It's not part of the MLP seasons that I bought. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to watch the Christmas special. That's problem number 1. So, first of all, yeah, let's say, what's it called? Let's look it up here. Give me a minute. There's apparently a book called that. And there's a DVD, which we're not doing. If it's on Netflix, then, well, you're going to have to pay for a few things to make that happen, because I don't have Netflix. Let's try this. I'm not saying it's not part of the show, I'm just saying we're going to have to work out some practicalities to make this happen. What? That's confusing. Oh, there it is. Yeah, no, Trathan. I don't do that for the show. For my legally protected, financially solvent show, I make sure I get everything quite legally. So if I can't buy it in a manner that is obtainable, then the answer is no, period. I'm not finding it here. Hang on. Let me see if I can find it on Netflix. Of course I can't search Netflix if I don't have a Netflix account. Why would I be able to do that? That's insanity. Let's see if we can bypass that. There we go. Maybe. Okay, best gift ever, 2018. Ponies get in the spirit of holidays by drawing names for a gift exchange, and then race around Equestria in search of the perfect presents. Is this it? If this is it, then yeah, it is on Netflix. It's right here. I'm staring at it. Excuse me. How much is Netflix nowadays? Cost, you moron. Tell me how much it cost. Oh, for Christ's sakes. Netflix pricing. Well, look at Google. You're terrible. Alright, here we go. Looks like it's $14. And it would be just 1 month. Sign up and then immediately drop it. I'm pretty sure any email I have attached to that has long since used up its free trial act. Hang on. Doesn't say how long. Oh, there it is. 44 minutes. So it is a full-length episode. which also means that we would only cover that episode that Sunday, which we could do. That's fine. That's the format anyways. So, yeah, if you're willing to pay for that, because that is what that's going to require, I'll go ahead and do that. If you're not, that's cool too. You've got 3 weeks. Because, yeah, that's it. Cool, I'm down. I guess that's it. So, tomorrow, no streams as usual. Tuesday, we'll be starting up Surviving Mars. And now I have to go do my job as a good stepson and go lift heavy things for my step-parents. So, I will see you all Tuesday.